Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another live episode of Live Chat with James here in Vancouver, British Columbia, the ProPix TV studios. Don't forget that if you wish to call in and voice your opinion on any of the topics that we cover, or just to share grandma's chocolate chip cookie recipe and say hello, you're more than welcome to do that as well. Remember that you can do so not only on the telephone line, but you can also call in using the WhatsApp. Yes, you can do so. The number for you to call in at is a 1-368 997 6741. Once again, 1-368 997 6741. Feel free to call in and voice your opinion or just say hello here on a beautiful Friday night in Vancouver, British Columbia. We are going to look into, I'm just going to make sure our WhatsApp is active here before we get going so that we don't ignore any of your calls. And of course, you can always use the chat option on this side of your screen or bottom, depending on which app you are joining us from or which streaming platform. Of course, you are probably watching on either YouTube, Facebook, and others. I can't remember them all at this point, but in any event, all of the different chat rooms that are open, or the chat options, of course, are there, and they all come into the one inbox here, so I can respond to them all as this show goes on. So feel free to do so. You're always welcome to be a part of the program and to chat with us. Also, thanks to Carry Movers Limited of Metro Vancouver in the Fraser Valley for a sponsorship of yet another episode. Carry Movers is your local and long-distance family-owned and operated moving company in Western Canada. You can find them online for a free quote or hourly rates at www.carrymovers.com. That's K-A-R-Y, movers.com. All right, folks, let's jump into the show as we've got a lot to cover tonight. And I will warn you ahead of time that if you are a mega moron, then there is a chance I'm going to offend you tonight. And that's okay. By all means, throw your comments in. If you wish, I have no problem listening to your opinions and allowing you the freedom to speak your mind, even if it differs from my own. We can have a healthy conversation, healthy debate, or we can at least just listen to what each other has to say, and I'm okay with that. There's something called freedom of speech, freedom of expression. I'm a big supporter of it, even not when I disagree with what is being said. So, welcome to Live Chat. Tonight, it's a tale of two democracies. Yes, the silence of the lambs and how free speech died while the world is watching. Here at home, we'll also look at a family dynasty that owns our beloved Vancouver Canucks and how that family is tearing itself apart in a billion-dollar civil war. Also, our government is tabling legislation to fight the very hatred that seems to be consuming our neighbors down to the south. Now, we'll also take a look at the Vancouver Canucks and what a hypocrisy and potentially deceitful way in which they are using children's charities and other associations and organizations to better their public image, while actually doing quite the opposite and disrespecting those that they are claiming to be helping, such as the Autism Network. We will get into that in just a moment. We'll also be taking a look at whether or not this is the twilight of the American experiment, and why does this feel like the rest of the world is just watching it happen? We'll connect the dots from Vancouver to Washington, from Beirut to the Magic Kingdom. So stick around, folks, and don't forget that you can have your opinion shared. Give us a call, either through the telephone line or through WhatsApp. And that number, once again, is 1-368 997 6741. Feel free to reach out and speak your opinion or put it up in the chat screen. Now, let's take a look at an empire civil war, and that is the Aquilini family feud. Yes, the first story is one of immense wealth, power, and alleged betrayal that goes to the heart of the city's identity. The Aquilini family, the owners of the Vancouver Canucks and Rogers Arena, are embroiled in a bitter legal battle that reads like a script from a prestige drama. Now, Matteo Aquilini, grandson of the family's patriarch, Luigi Aquilini, has filed a lawsuit alleging a retaliatory conspiracy by his grandfather and his uncles, Roberto and the Canucks chairman, Francesco Aquilini. The lawsuit claims that they have systematically worked to disinherit Matteo's father, Paolo Aquilini, and his entire family line from the multi-billion-dollar family trust. Now, what allegedly triggered this billion-dollar excommunication? According to the lawsuit, the retaliation began in 2020, right after Paolo raised historical sexual assault allegations where a member of his family was the alleged victim, and a member of his brother's family, which we're talking about Roberto, was allegedly the perpetrator. And that was something that allegedly happened during their childhood. The legal filings, which contain allegations that have not yet been tested in court, paint a grim picture of family that, when confronted with a serious accusation of sexual assault, allegedly chose not to investigate, but to retaliate, to push out the branch of the family that brought the darkness to light. Sounds like the Aquilinis want to join into the Trump family at this rate. Now, this isn't just about money. It's about a potential culture of power and secrecy where speaking out is punished with financial and social ruin. The lawsuit further alleges that the very structure of the family's wealth was manipulated. In 2025, a restructuring happened of the family trust, which concentrated power in the hands of Luigi, Francesco, and Roberto, and that was allegedly carried out while the family matriarch, Elisa Aquilini, was gravely ill and hospitalized. This was a apparent violation of a previous 1995 trust designed to prevent just such a consolidation of control. Now, the Aquilini runs so deep that it is spilled into the Canucks organization itself. Matteo's brother, Christian Aquilini, who has autism, filed a human rights complaint alleging he was subjected to a campaign of harassment and bullying while working for the team, leading to severe emotional distress, allegedly stemming from threats by his uncles. The lawsuit, therefore, is more than a family squabble. It pulls back the curtains on one of BC's most powerful and private dynasties and asks a fundamental question. In the highest echelons of our city's elite, can power silence truth? And I might add that the Vancouver Canucks are very publicly involved in raising funds and awareness on autism issues. And as such, as they are apparently and allegedly bullying a member of their own family who has autism, it really shows me a true disgusting side of the Vancouver Canucks organization and the Aquilini family. I mean, I know personally that the Vancouver Canucks and the Aquilini family try to silence media. I actually have footage of their security physically pushing a camera, pushing a reporter, and this is on public property outside of GM Place, as their staff laughed and made fun of someone who was in mental distress and was being apprehended, restrained, and placed into a police vehicle. Instead of being respectful and showing any level of class, the Canucks security, including some of their top security, not just rental cops, but people who worked directly for Canucks Sports and Entertainment, were there laughing and making fun of this individual. The Canucks direct employee, pushed the cameraman and the camera, physically hitting him and, trying to block from getting shots of them acting like idiots. And so if you have any doubt that the Vancouver Canucks organization also tries to silence the media in Vancouver, guess what? I've got it on camera and I can prove it. So let's even try to argue that point. When that was brought up as a concern to the Vancouver Canucks, they chose to ignore it. They did not even respond at the time to the complaints about their staff behavior. And again, it just shows that they really couldn't give a shit about the people that pay for the tickets, for the merchandise, and to support the team and their families' businesses in this city. So let that be a warning to you, folks. Personally, yeah, you take it for what it's worth. You do your own research, but I guarantee you that there's a lot of darkness to that Aquilini family and the Canucks organization that you are not aware of. Now, while one of our city's most prominent families fights over billions, the province is telling the rest of us that the piggy bank is empty for a threat that could cost us everything. That's right. We have what's being called sobering news from the BC government. There is no new money for the province's 10-year flood strategy. This strategy that will require billions of dollars to protect us from a repeat of the catastrophic 2021 floods, a disaster that destroyed homes, wiped out infrastructure, and caused billions in damage, not to mention tragically killed 5 people. The reason? The province is facing a ballooning operating deficit that is now estimated at $11.6 billion. And yet, in the very same news cycle, the city of Vancouver found the time and occasion to bestow its highest honor, the Freedom of the City Award, on Hollywood star and hometown hero Ryan Reynolds. Now, let's be clear, Reynolds is a deserving recipient. He and his wife and family are so much involved in philanthropic work, as well as looking at what they do to create jobs in the city, what they do on a national scale, what they do on an international scale. So at no way am I trying to diss Ryan Reynolds. I have nothing but utmost respect for him, his wife, and his family. But it's just at the point where the city and the province are screaming poverty that they are taking time to do these sort of things. Now, of course, the Reynolds family, Ryan, his wife, and people associated with them are huge donors to the Greater Vancouver Food Bank for food relief. And that's just one of many ways that we can commend what they do and see them as a huge source of pride for Vancouver. So once again, it's not a diss on them at all. It was just pointing out the polarizing issues of different ways in which the city and the province are spending money. Now, in the juxtaposition of this being jarring, it highlights a fundamental tension in modern governance. On one hand, we have a systemic existential crisis, climate change fueling flooding. Yes, that requires massive, long-term, and frankly, unglamorous investment. It's not something that is, really put out there to tout and to, have fanfare about. It is a disaster waiting to happen if they do not find a way to restore funding for those initiatives. On the other hand, we have a symbolic headline-grabbing feel-good gesture. This is far easier to give an award to a celebrity than it is to find billions of dollars for dikes and drainage systems. This contrast reveals the seductive allure of the symbolic gesture over the grinding necessity of the substantive solution, a challenge that governments everywhere are failing to meet. And so again, just for clarity, I'm not dissing Ryan Reynolds or his family in any way. Instead, I'm looking at the complex differentiation between what the city says and the province says they have for much needed infrastructure and flood mitigation and prevention, and yet they want to spend money on issues such as celebrating hometown heroes. Now, when we look at a beacon of hope, yes, the Greater Vancouver Food Bank. Amid the strife and the struggle, there are beacons of hope. In a piece of genuinely good news, the Greater Vancouver Food Bank has finally found a permanent home. After being forced to move 6 times in just 4 years, the Greater Vancouver Food Bank has purchased a 65,000 square foot facility on Lougheed Highway. Now, this new stable home isn't just about storage space. It's allowing the food bank to innovate. They've launched a new Fresh Start program, partnering with organizations like Work BC and Coast Mental Health Association to be on site, connecting clients directly with services that can help address the root causes of poverty and food insecurity. It's a story of community resilience and a reminder of what can be achieved when people come together to solve real problems. Let's take a look here now at the Canadian counterpoint. Yes, legislating against hate. That spirit of solving problems brings us to Ottawa as we prepare to turn our attention south of the border. Yes, down to the US, a nation seemingly consumed by division. It's critical to first look at how our own government is choosing to respond by the rising tide of hatred. This week, the federal government introduced new legislation called the Combating Hate Act. This isn't a vague promise, it's a direct surgical amendment to the criminal code designed to protect vulnerable communities. The bill makes it a specific crime to intimidate or obstruct people from accessing places of worship, schools, and community centers. It makes hate motivated crime a distinct offense, ensuring it's clearly denounced. It also criminalizes the willful promotion of hatred by publicly displaying certain terrorist or hate symbols. Crucially, the legislation also is there to streamline the justice process. It codifies a legal definition of hatred to provide clarity, and it removes the requirement to get the Attorney General's consent before laying hate propaganda charges, allowing law enforcement to act more quickly. The government has been careful to state that these changes respect the Charter of Freedoms of Expression and Peaceful Assembly, but they are also drawing a clear line. This is a government acting on the principle that certain speech is not just offensive, but actively harmful, and that the state has a legitimate role in protecting its citizens from that harm. Remember that this approach is essential. Remember that this philosophy is important. It is the definition of a democratic norm. A norm, as we're about to see, is being systematically dismantled just across the border. Yes, this dismantling of it in the US is what we will look at next, and that's a nation's voice that seems to be wrapped in chains, and it is what some are referring to as the American experiment. Now, we turn to the United States and what can only be described as a constitutional crisis unfolding in plain sight. It's a story about the death of a conservative activist, the silencing of a liberal comedian, and the authoritarian playbook that connects them both. Now, let's start with the night they silenced laughter, the takedown of Jimmy Kimmel. On Wednesday, the Disney-owned network ABC announced it was indefinitely suspending its flagship late-night program, Jimmy Kimmel Live. That, to me, is very concerning. The network's official statement was chilling in its brevity, saying only that the show would be preempted indefinitely. The suspension came after Kimmel, in his monologue, first condemned the senseless murder of a conservative activist, Charlie Kirk, but then sharply criticized what he called the MAGA gang for desperately trying to characterize. Oh, there's Stay. Hello, Stay. Thanks for joining. Fist bumps to you, too. Thanks for being a part of the show tonight. Now, as I say, he called the MAGA gang for desperately trying to characterize the kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. Very clear, very true, and that pissed off a lot of people, but let's face it, Kimmel was not wrong. Now, what followed was not a debate. It was a takedown, and it followed a very specific, deliberate sequence of events. First, the government issued a threat. Brendan Carr, the Trump-appointed chairman of the FCC, or the Federal Communications Commission, went on a podcast and called Kimmel's comments truly sick. He then issued a barely veiled threat, warning that ABC and its local affiliates were running the risk of fines or license revocation from the FCC. This was a direct threat from a federal regulator against a media company over its political commentary. Secondly, the corporations complied. Nexstar and Sinclair, two of the largest owners of local ABC affiliate stations in the country, announced they would be pulling Kimmel's show from their airwaves, citing his offensive and insensitive comments. Now, when you look at that, the third part of it is that the parent company capitulated. Just minutes after Nextstar's announcement, Disney ABC caved to the pressure and suspended the show nationwide. And yet now they are talking about showing a memorial in its place. Yes, a memorial to Charlie Clark, who spews nothing but division, polarization, racist comments. The list goes on about the hate that he tried to incite in America and worldwide. And yet here they damn well go against their own statements by wanting to squash the freedom of speech and freedom of expression for anybody that speaks out against them or their precious treasure trove of political idiots, including Trump. Now, Trump is just nothing but a piece of shit, and we know that already. He stands up there and he lies. He's a pedo. He goes after world leaders. He goes after corporate leaders, anybody that's going to have the nerve to speak out or challenge him in any way, shape, or form. Unfortunately, the political world is bowing to his whims. They're bowing to whatever Trump says and what he wants. And that is just a pile of bullshit, especially when you're going to take down a comedian at a talk show for saying something that is true. You are instead going to protect and air a program that celebrates someone who did quite the opposite. Yes, Yankee Land has gone crazy, Stay. You're absolutely correct. And it drives me nuts because they are protecting someone who wants to be a dictator, someone who is a proven criminal, a felon, a piece of shit. I mean, just plain and simple. What's Trump going to do? Try to cancel me? I'm in Canada. Come on across the border, you piece of shit. But anyway, we'll move on from that because I could get just wound right up when it comes to Trump and his band of merry misfits. But anyway, finally, the executives gave praise to Donald Trump and took to his Truth Social platform to celebrate the act of censorship. Yes, Trump himself celebrated. He not only celebrated the censorship and said that they finally have the courage to do what has to be done. Now, Trump says that it's because of Kimmel's ratings. It's because of many other things. But let's not forget, this was a flagship program for ABC. And of course, there was never talk about ratings or canceling the program until Trump opened his mouth with his administration. Again, is just because they had the nerve to speak out against that idiot. Now, let's be perfectly clear about this. What it is a government threat, corporate compliance, and executive praise. This is a classic authoritarian playbook for controlling the media. It bypasses the need for state-run television by using the levers of regulatory power and market pressure to achieve the exact same result. The silencing of critical voices. Free speech advocates were unequivocal. They were calling it a case of a media outlet that had withered under government pressure. The Kimmel suspension was a test case for the model in America, and it worked perfectly. Let's also not forget that in the United States, the FCC has a certain regulation policy and laws that prohibit an individual from owning or a corporation from owning over 33%, somewhere in around there, of the media landscape. Now, when you look at that, of course, right now, you have the Nextstar, who is trying to buy up a fellow rival network and a group of stations to become much, much greater than this 33% of the total U.S. market. This means that they need a special provision, changes of laws and regulations, and acceptance and endorsement by the FCC chair and the FCC, as well as Donald Trump. Wow. Now I think we're getting to the heart of the matter as to why Nextstar and the other networks, including ABC, Disney, have decided to put their balls back in their purse and stand down. Instead, they are just supporting Trump and his people because they want to continue this merger by Nextstar with one of their competitors. How does this impact Disney? Well, it's got a major impact when it comes to ABC and Disney for the simple fact that when you look at Sinclair Broadcasting and when you look at Nextstar, these companies are major licensing outlets that are a part of the ABC Disney network and their affiliated stations. It's all about the billions of dollars in transactions that are playing behind the scenes. So that is what it comes down to. Kimmel was not suspended or even fired for what he said. No, it happened because these cowards at ABC and Disney and these cowards at Nexstar and Sinclair are trying to appease Trump and the FCC so that they can curry favor and be able to go against the long-standing laws that prohibited the market saturation by one ownership or conglomerate. And that is the truth. They want, just as we've seen already with Paramount and other networks trying to make changes to what has been historically accepted. But now that's the truth. It's all about the money. It has absolutely nothing to do with what is right or what is wrong. And after all, they're going to air on their network instead of Jimmy Kimmel. They're going to actually air a program to celebrate the life of another piece of shit, Charlie Kirk, who spent his time trying to incite hatred and division in the American public. So I don't care. People can say, yeah, it's puppet on a string. You're absolutely right, Stay. And people may be pissed that I am stating that clearly about Charlie Kirk, but let's face it. People say don't speak ill of the dead. Well, do you know what? It's nothing I wouldn't have said to his face. It's nothing I wouldn't say. I'm not going to speak nice and praise him and blow smoke out my ass to appease Charlie Kirk's supporters when it's not the truth. I'm not going to sit here and lie because he's dead. Sorry, I do not agree with him being dead. I do not agree with the idiots that want to incite violence, whether it's against the Turning Point USA, whether it's against Trump or anybody else. I don't agree with violence. It's not the way to do it. You want to challenge something? Do exactly what I'm doing. Speak your voice. Speak your opinions. Let the chips fall where they may, but do not ever act out in violence. As much as Charlie Kirk has the right to say what he said, and as much as Jimmy Kimmel has the right to say what he said, and as much as I have the right to express my opinions, at no time should anybody ever face a threat of violence or risk to their safety for doing so. It's just not right. So don't confuse my frustration and my anger at the situation with promoting violence, because in no way, shape, or form do I ever promote violence against anybody. Completely wrong. You have children and Charlie Kirk's wife who now have to go on through life without him. Regardless as to what you thought of him as a public person, he was still a father. He was still a husband, and to that, I think the world suffered a terrible loss. But at the same time, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that he did not speak hatred and spill venom of separation in America. It's just not who I am. Now, when we look at this whole situation, it is sweeping a campaign of censorship in American history, and that is our modern American history. And in the wake of Charlie Kirk's death, a coordinated effort has been launched by conservatives to punish, fire, and deplatform others who have expressed any sentiments that they deem inappropriate. Teachers in Virginia, Texas, and Iowa have been suspended or are facing termination because they've posted things to their social media that were critical of Kirk. The airline pilots have been grounded. University employees have been fired. So here you are saying that Charlie Kirk had the right to speak his mind, his racist spewing, just garbage. Oh, but anybody who speaks out and speaks against him or Trump, well, they don't have those same rights. Wrong, they do. Now, the hypocrisy is staggering. Charlie Kirk and his organization, Turning Point USA, consistently argue for the absolute right to free expression, even for what they themselves called ugly or evil ideas. Yet the movement is now acting in his name, demanding that a comedian be silenced for telling jokes and that the teachers lose their livelihoods for posting opinions. While this purge is underway, Turning Point USA is experiencing a miraculous surge in support with over 62,000 new students signing up to join. You have public and online campaigns raising funds for the Kirk family that are in around the $6 million mark on one platform alone. Seriously, people. Now, the double standard is so profound, it's worth laying out plainly. Yes, let's take a look. Speech to be protected. Turning Point USA and Charlie Kirk's speech. They want that protected. Speech to be punished. Jimmy Kimmel, educators and critics. Yeah, they want that punished. Content. In terms of provocative opinions, ugly or evil ideas, hatred, racist, and polarizing beliefs. Yes, when it comes from Turning Point USA or Charlie Kirk, they wanted that protected. That freedom of speech needed to be protected at all costs. But when you mock politicians, criticizing the politicalization of a tragedy, or expressing pleasure in Kirk's death, which I think is wrong, and I find disgusting to express pleasure in any person's death. But the point being is that that is freedom of speech that, unfortunately, they are trying to block that freedom of speech. Now, the outcome, it's the Turning Point USA and Charlie Kirk and, all of those opinions were defended as essential First Amendment expressions. On the other side, when it comes to Jimmy Kimmel, educators and critics, no, they want that to be punished. The outcome there is suspensions, firings, public condemnation, and government investigation. Yeah, it shows the hypocrisy very, very clearly. Now, what we are witnessing here is a strategic and dangerous blurring of lines. The physical violence of Kirk's assassination is being conflated with the speech of his critics. Prominent Republican senators like Senator Lindsey Graham now frame critical remarks as an attack on a movement by using violence. This rhetorical trick allows them to justify their own campaign of censorship as a necessary defense against so-called violence. The very concept of safety is being twisted to mean safety from ideas that you don't like. Total bullshit. Now, let's take a look at the authoritarian playbook and Unmasking Project 2025. This is not random. This is not spontaneous culture war. It's not a flare-up of that. It is the execution of a plan called, you guessed it, Project 2025. For those who haven't heard of it, Project 2025 is a 900-page blueprint authored by the Heritage Foundation and over 100 conservative groups for how fundamentally reshaping the American government from day one. And this was day one of a new Trump administration. Its goals are explicit and extreme. It calls for gutting the enforcement of civil rights laws by eliminating concepts. The concepts that we're talking about are like disparate impact, which is used to identify systemic discrimination. It plans to weaponize the Department of Justice to prosecute political opponents, to dismantle diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives across federal government. And it outlines a plan known as Schedule F to strip job protections for tens of thousands of nonpartisan civil servants, allowing them to be replaced with political appointees loyal only to that piece of shit Trump. Now, connect the theory to what we've just seen in practice. Project 2025 outlines how to use the executive branch to enforce ideological conformity. The Kimmel suspension saw the executive branch via the FCC to do exactly that. The campaign to fire teachers and fire critics of Charlie Kirk sees public officials demanding retribution for ideological nonconformity. What has happened this past week is the playbook being run in real time. This is not a political drama. It is a clear and present danger to the American constitutional order. Now, let's look at a world in retreat, the Trump doctrine and its consequences, folks. The decay of democratic norms within the United States is not contained in one crisis. It's radiating outwards. It's creating a power vacuum on the world stage and emboldening authoritarians who see an America that looks more and more like them. We know who we're referring to here, and that is the way it is because we know whether it's Kim Jong-un, Kim Jong-il, whether or not it's Xi or Putin. Yes, all heroes of Trump, apparently, because he looks up to them and he respects them and he wants to be just like them. But I'll tell you, he sure as hell is not holding them accountable for the war crimes or illegal actions, humanitarian crisis, the human rights abuses, and, plain and simple, Trump just wants to be like them. But let's move on to the America First foreign policy that has been defined by deep hostility to international cooperation. Now, President Trump has pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Agreement, the World Health Organization, and the Iran nuclear deal, which constantly threatens to abandon core alliances like NATO. This retreat from global leadership has been interpreted by autocrats as a green light. In Hungary, Prime Minister Viktor Orban has escalated his attacks on the LGBTQ plus rights, with his chief of staff crediting the Trump administration for lifting the American boot off his government's chest. In Serbia and Turkey, leaders have cracked down on civil society and political opponents, no longer fearing condemnation from Washington. The guardrails are gone. The moral weight of the U.S. disapproval, which for decades provided at least some check on authoritarian impulses, has vanished. Now we can look at the impunity in the Middle East. Nowhere in this vacuum is it more apparent than in the Middle East. As the U.S. abdicates its role, long simmering conflicts are exploding. A United Nations Commission of Inquiry recently concluded that Israel has committed acts of genocide in Gaza. But don't worry, Trump will go for lunch with Netanyahu and say, hey, maybe you should lighten up. No? All right, I tried. Simultaneously, the International Commission of Jurists has accused Israel of violating the UN Charter and international humanitarian law with its attacks on Lebanon. Their report details indiscriminate and disproportionate attacks, the targeting of UN peacekeepers, and the issuance ineffective evacuation orders that have created over 1 million internally displaced people. All while the UN Security Council remains, in their words, blocked by divisions and incapable of action. Thanks, Trump. Now, this is obviously a president that is distracted. The Epstein haunting, yes. The pedo who is too busy trying to make sure that you don't get the full Epstein files until his 1,000+ FBI and other government agents go through and redact his name from it. And then you've got Kash Patel, this little weasel. Yeah, Trump isn't in the list. Oh, there is no list. Oh, there is a list. I'll release it. Oh, hold on. No, the list is just a scandal. The list is fake. The list was fabricated by the Democrats. Oh, wait, hold on. Right, there is no list. Trump's not in the list. How many times, he was asked the other day, was Trump appearing in the list? I don't know, he says. They said over 1,000. He says no. They said over 500. He says no. Over 100. He says no. They said, well, then what's the number? He says, I don't know. Well, how does he know he's not in the list over 100 times? How does he know he's not in the list and the documents over 500 times or 1,000 times? It shows that Kash Patel is full of shit, too, and he can't be trusted to lead a third-grade spelling bee, let alone the most powerful law enforcement agency in the United States of America. Where's the American president while these global crises are raging? He's on a state visit to the United Kingdom. Yes, where he's behaving like he is a third school in a museum but wants to try on every outfit that's on display. He wants the world leaders, including King Charles, to bow to his whims and serve him. Disgusting. While he's in the UK, of course, he's being haunted by the ghosts of his past. Protesters there used his visit to debate not foreign policy, but to project giant images of Donald Trump alongside the convicted sex offender and trafficker Jeffrey Epstein onto the walls of Windsor Castle. This public shaming on the world stage is a potent symbol of presidency consumed by personal scandal and moral rot. At home, Trump continues to face intense scrutiny over his long friendship with Epstein and his administration's refusal to release those related Justice Department files. This isn't just distraction, it's disqualification. A leader so mired in the questions about his association with one of history's most notorious pedophiles cannot offer credible moral leadership to a world on fire. While he also was considering allegedly giving a pardon to Diddy, another one who is in the list of the most notorious and despicable sex offenders and traffickers in history. Unbelievable. It's a complicity of silence, folks. Why are world leaders bowing to Trump? And that's what is leading so many to ask. Why are world leaders bowing to this? Why the silence? The answer is complex. It's not a simple case of a universal agreement. Some, like the leaders of the Gulf states, are privately and publicly pleading with Trump to use his leverage to rein in allies like Israel. But they're terrified of taking any real economic or political action that might provoke his wrath. Other allies, like India, have suddenly found themselves on the receiving end of punitive sanctions, a shocking turn for a country long courted as a strategic partner. This America First doctrine has turned the U.S. from a predictable, if sometimes flawed, global leader into a rogue superpower. Foreign aid is no longer about building stability. It's about transactional, bilateral deals that advance narrow American priorities. The world is not so much bowing as it is helping to hedge its bets. It's a global realignment born of fear, opportunism, and where nations are forced to navigate new dangerous landscapes without a reliable anchor. The silence you hear is the sound of basically a strategic recalculation, folks. Now, let's move on to speak about the mouse that cowered. Disney's corporate capitulation, yes. I personally think Walt Disney is probably rolling in his grave. He is turning disgusted by what the current Disney executives have allowed his legacy to become. Finally, yes, we are going to take a look here at the ultimate symbol of this era of cowardice. The ultimate symbol of cowardice has become the ABC and the Disney Company. They've gone from being the Magic Kingdom to being morally bankrupt. For decades, Disney was one of the most beloved and trusted brands on Earth. Today, its reputation is in tatters. The influential Axios Harris poll shows Disney's reputation has fallen to nearly fair for the first time in its history. The company is caught in a political vice. On one side, it has been relentlessly attacked by conservatives for being woke, citing its diversity and inclusion policies and its modern updates to its classic films like Snow White. On the other hand, its core audience has grown frustrated with skyrocketing prices that are putting Disney vacations out of the reach for middle class. In a flood of content on Disney Plus that many feel has diluted the magic of brands such as Marvel and Star Wars. Some say it's a legacy betrayed. The suspension of Jimmy Kimmel is the pathetic culmination of this identity crisis. Faced with a direct threat from a Trump administration, Disney and its CEO, Bob Iger, have a choice. Stand on the principle of free expression, of value, supposedly at the heart of their creative enterprise, or to capitulate. They chose to capitulate. The backlash from their own side was immediate and fierce. Protests erupted outside Disney's headquarters in Burbank, California, with the Writers Guild of America and others holding signs labeling the executives as cowards, and accusing them of bending the knee to an authoritarian government. And I will point out a very clear point that in transparency here, folks, I am an apprentice member of the UBPC, the Union of BC Performers, which is a part of ACTRA, and of course, part of the entertainment industry. I'm also a member of many journalistic organizations, including the International Federation of Journalists. So you're damn right, I'm going to stand on the side of free speech and ethics. But this decision reveals a company trapped in the paradox of its own making. Disney's brand has been damaged for years by accusations from the far right of being too politically correct. Yet its actual customer base skews democratic. In the Kimmel situation, Disney tried to appease the very right-wing political forces that have been attacking their brand for years. And in doing so, they betrayed and alienated their actual audience, confirming the change of corporate cowardice and the charge of corporate cowardice, and sparking calls to boycotts from the people who actually buy their Disney products. In trying to de-escalate a political fight, Disney has pleased no one and now stands for nothing. The legacy of Walt Disney, built on wholesome family values, family unity, and American optimism, is now a case study in moral bankruptcy. Walt is surely, as I said, turning in his grave at what his executives have allowed this company to become. Now, folks, let's take a look at the final word here as we get close to the end of the program. Again, if you want to call in before we wrap up the show, you are more than welcome to do so, both on WhatsApp or on telephone at 1-368-997-6741. Feel free to call in. Or, as you can see, we've had a bunch of comments here today by Stay. Thanks again, and stay safe. Thanks again for your comments here, and I've shared them on the screen just so that others could make sure that others could see your comments. Very happy to see you taking part in the conversation. Now, as I said, let's take a look at this wrap up here. We began tonight in Vancouver with a story of the family empire consumed by greed and alleged retaliation. We've seen that the Vancouver Canucks apparently don't follow their own ethics when it comes to trying to bring money into the organization and making themselves look good, as opposed to actually supporting and treating members of their own family with autism at the same respect that they expect others to do. We saw our own government trying to legislate against hate. Then we cross the border into a nation where the very foundations of democracy are cracking. The suspension of a comedian is not a trivial matter. I've been doing stand-up comedy since the 80s. I've performed in the US. I've performed in all regions of Canada. And regardless as to whether you like the comedian content or anything else that's online, you can choose not to go to that site. You can choose not to follow them on a platform. If you're watching television, you can choose to turn the channel. I do it all the time. I mean, I like Charlie Kirk as per what he preached and really went out to publicize in terms of his thoughts and his opinions and so forth. But you're damn right that I supported his right to have that freedom to express his opinions and his thoughts without any retaliation. Violence is never the answer. And his loss is just that. It is a loss. It's a silencing of a freedom of expression and a freedom of speech. And that is a horrific day. Now let's take a look. We've also talked about this being a symptom of a deep and dangerous sickness. A nation where power is no longer held to account by truth, but where power is now used to silence it. From the censorship of late-night television, folks, to the weaponization of a tragic death, to the methodical plan to dismantle the civil service, the warning signs are flashing red. The American experiment, that beacon of freedom and democracy, is faltering, ladies and gentlemen. If Americans do not wake up to the state of governance in their country, it will only move to strip them of the very rights and to isolate them further from international communities of democracies, of that long respect that they have held from people around the globe. The silence of the lambs is deafening, and the world is watching. Very clear, folks. Very clear. It's a sad day when we look at this in terms of the attacks on freedom, democracy, the rule of law. But at the end of the day, folks, it takes everyone to stand up, to fight back in the war of votes, in the world of free speech, freedom of expression. Fight back with your voice. Never fight back with violence. It only takes away from the message in which you are trying to deliver. Violence makes people deaf, because when you are trying to spearhead a cause, when you are trying to right the wrongs, in order to get that support of others and to make a movement, you need to do so peacefully. You need to do so with common sense. You have to do so with facts, with history, and with a plan of action for the future. And to keep that credibility, ladies and gentlemen, you need to do it peacefully. With that, I am James Kuzno, coming to you again from Vancouver, British Columbia, here at the studios of ProPix TV. If you have any comments, please feel free to share them in the comment section. Or you can always leave a voicemail through WhatsApp or through phone lines to our studio line at 1-368-997-6741. And you can also, if you don't want your message up in public, you can always share your thoughts and opinions or your ideas for future shows and content with us directly via email. The email address is smile, S-M-I-L-E, at propixcanada.com. That's S-M-I-L-E at PROPICScanada.com. Thanks for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. And again, thank you very much to those who commented on the program and in our comment section, including Stay Safe. Thanks again for being a valued member of the audience and a part of the show. Stay safe, everyone. Take care.